It's bullseye. We're gonna be talking about some retard online. Yeah, this guy. Yeah, right here. Is Scott retarded? Well, yes, we're gonna talk about that, actually. Yes, an old French word that means to delay, pretty much. And over time, it became this derogatory term we use for retards, as we know today, or intellectually disabled people. And Scott is basically that. So what is his intellectual disabled thing? Well, basically everything. But we'll use the better term, developmentally disabled. I think that's a good term to use for Scunty McDirtface over here. What is developmentally disabled? Let's get into this. Developmental disability is a term used to describe a group of conditions that cause physical, learning, language, or behavior impairments. These disabilities begin during a person's developmental period, typically before birth or in early childhood, and can impact a person's daily functioning and independence. Yep, there you go. I guess that's one down for Scott Buchanan. And I want to point out that experts do analyze developmental disabilities through a comprehensive assessment that considers a person's medical history, cognitive and language abilities, motor skills, and social and emotional development. This may involve diagnostic tests, interviews with individuals and their family, observations of a person's behavior and functioning in various settings. The goal of this analysis is to gain a thorough understanding of individuals' needs and abilities to provide an appropriate support and interventions. Interesting, isn't it? Can we talk about how to tell from these impairments? We should also talk about the common behavior and patterns that these supposed experts analyze. I don't know, I'm just going based on information I know. So, let's just talk about communication and difficulties. Individuals will develop with developmental disabilities may have difficulty with understanding or using language, including challenges with speech, language, and comprehension or social communication. Let's start with a few examples of Scott. I want to go back in time and start with the part where Nikki Nines once upon a time suggested a Mormon group to Scott to help him better himself. Scott takes this and uses it and says, you're trying to get the Mormon Mafia on me. So he seems to not understand language or communication at all. He doesn't seem to comprehend much things that are being told to him. For instance, when Ken decides that he doesn't want anything to do with Scott but has people in the chats that Scott doesn't like, he throws a fit. How could he have these same people in his chats but not me? With this example, he's also been complaining of these same people when they're attacking his family. But if you also consider the fact that he's also attacked Ken's family, you get the idea that, yeah, you understand why Ken doesn't have Scott in his chats, but everybody else. One, they never themselves attacked his family. Right? Going on further, communication difficulties, he seems to tend to ramble on and not let the other person speak. The intentions of being heard and not listening learn is kind of inherent, although it could be human interaction, just human. But Scott emphasizes this on a strand of a long time. I've experienced this with myself. He asks me to be on call and then starts yelling over me all the time. Scott seems to not like hearing things that are negative about him. And being that, he seems to not be able to respond to those in kind. So what does he usually respond with? Obsessed, retard, you're autistic, all that good stuff. Point being, he doesn't seem to get the idea that communication isn't about making demands of other people. And more importantly, he seems to misinterpret people and what they say. Not to mention, he does seem to complain about people donating to others he doesn't like. For example, when I donate to Dave $500 along with Slappy, he cuts his hair. Scott, for some reason, is mad about that. When people donate to Malky, he, for some reason, doesn't like that. At the time, he was even talking about how I was donating to Joe to get your point across, and that also bothered him. Thing is, he seems to have a problem with donations, and his whole spiel of donations is that I guess he just doesn't like it. We don't know why. He just doesn't communicate this effectively at all. The only explanation is it's because he doesn't like the people he dislikes getting money or being rewarded. So that's our only extrapolation to this, which goes to the social and emotional challenges. We'll talk about that right now. Let's go. This would include understanding social cues, forming relationships, regulating emotions, or exhibiting inappropriate behaviors in social situations. Yeah, that seems about right. That really is up Scott's alley. Well, let's just start with the fact that he wore a penis on his head and went to Omegle, trying to talk to kids about not being on Omegle. Also talking to pedos, suggesting he's busting pedos on Omegle. It is bizarre, right? And the accusation that he was being called pedo for this came from himself. And it started with Ken making a video of him just putting on a dickhead hat. And Scott took that as, "You're calling me a pedophile!" So this was an emotional response. It was impulsive, right? So let's think about this for a second here. Let's just think about it. What business really have going on Omegle wearing a penis hat and talking to children, and you shouldn't be on here because there's creeps and weirdos? Wow, being a creep and weirdo. The solution and understanding here is that he is a creep and weirdo. He just doesn't realize it yet. Though subconsciously he probably does, he just doesn't like to feel like one, I suppose. Forming relationships is also another thing. He seems to point fingers and blame other people for his problems. Same thing he said about Vikings. Problem is that usually people like Ken, Dave, Nikki, Nines, Mars probably don't want anything to do with him, including Joe, is because of his threats and shit, basically. Threatening to kill people, threatening to dox people, harassing them behind DMs. Oftentimes than not, he is pushed away and not wanting anything to do with because of his, behavior. He seems to exhibit behaviors of, just being a piece of shit. I'll elaborate on that. Scott McKinnon suggesting that he showed more empathy because he had a heart-to-heart, and him along with his dumb YR and Jacob RP crew talked about his cousin dying, suggested he has more empathy. Yet meanwhile, he doesn't understand that maybe Vikings not talking about it is him showing empathy. Maybe he's grieving behind the scenes. But because to Scott, Vikings doesn't like him, therefore he has no empathy for his cousin. To him, that means he's a better person. He feels that way, so therefore it must be true. Scott also seems to feel entitled to things, like, for instance, you better agree with the proof he shows, otherwise you're denying and you're disconnected from reality. Pointing this out, once upon a time, he came out and said Dave Rose doxed him his place of work. I asked for proof, he went on this tangent about how I have piss poor memory. Then suggested that he did prove it, I took it down. Then another one came by with it was proven on Seamless channel, which in the first place I don't know why he wouldn't just point there. Then it comes out that Tony shows something of a Twitter post Dave has, but that can't be doxing. There's no address, it was just a picture of a workplace. Point being, Scott McKinnon can't show proof. He just makes things up on a dime. And maybe to him that is proof, because how can that not be doxing, right? The thing is, he refused to show proof in the first place. He accused me of having piss poor memory, then accused me of taking his channel down that had the proof that Dave doxed Seamless place of work, then proceeded to say it was on Seamless channel. It just seems to me that Scott doesn't know how to come out and have an intellectual, or at least a logical explanation. Like, he can't point to directions. So what is he left with? Emotional and cop-outs. Usually that means he likes to call people names. Like autistic, obsessed, you're projecting, you're this, you're that, you're the other. He does, like I said, he does exhibit inappropriate behaviors. All of this would be considered inappropriate, especially the Omegle thing. Wearing the decade hat. We can also consider that inappropriate. And apparently he did wear a shirt called Fuck You in public. That's an interesting thing to talk about. Inappropriate behavior in social situations. We presume that that's not the case. Okay, let's analyze this. Joe Cronin at the time reviewed Scott McKenna getting in a fight with his roommate. Because he was screaming next door next to his roommate. His roommate came to complain about it, and Scott got mad. How dare you complain about it? Not realizing his actions and behaviors is actually causing people to be disturbed. That's one thing. Another thing is when his landlord came by, knocked on his door and told him, Scott, you're screaming all day last night. Stop it. Right. This is also coherent with him being, he intimidated 3 young girls, or 2. Don't remember quite exactly, but he was intimidating young girls and he was being tased as trying to act of being arrested. So he tends to act not just inappropriate, but like a manic in a lot of situations. His behavior aspects is just him not understanding social cues at all. And usually him going to bars and creeping people out. And considering that he looks like he's just been punched in the face all the time, we can also consider that he lost a bunch of fights. Yeah. Cognitive impairments. This might be my favorite one. This may involve challenges with memory, problem solving, attention, or learning new information, all that good stuff. Yeah, let's get into it. I don't really care to, but at the same time, this helps with the point that Scott's a retard, so let's do it. Cognitive impairments can vary on severity and can be caused by a wide range of factors. Let's just include genetic conditions. Let's also say brain injuries and neurodevelopmental disorder. Yep. Those kinds of cognitive impairments. Some other impairments include autism, Down syndrome, ADHD, dyslexia, and intellectual disabilities. Which he definitely has intellectual disabilities. Yeah, but brain injuries and genetic conditions probably are more that alley. But let's continue. These impairments can have significant impact on the individual's ability to function and participate in daily activities. Oh boy, isn't that a strange way to describe Scott McKenna? No, it's fact. For example, someone with cognitive impairments may struggle with remembering new information, which is true for Scott McKenna because, seemingly enough, he sometimes doesn't remember the next day of what people are saying. Sometimes he misinterprets things that are said. Either he's lying or he just doesn't remember it. Make your pick. But anyway, managing time and tasks or processing complex instructions. This can make it difficult for them to learn new skills. And usually, Scott McKenna doesn't have any skills. Let's just say that. We don't know his skills. Though there is the thing here, he's learning guitar playing, so I'll give him that. Other than that, he doesn't seem to have a good grasp on understanding what people say sometimes. Communicate effectively and achieve independence is something Scott seems to lack. Usually because basically he lived with his parents in the basement, the rehab, and covered trailers in the same community. People didn't want him around. He doesn't seem to get that nobody wanted him around at the time, but he came back anyway as a different account and got exposed as that account. I don't know why he felt the need to come back, but did, because I guess he felt the need to expose things still. Let's go. But I think this is a good scapegoat to repetitive behaviors. Or, not scapegoat, good segue to repetitive behaviors. Due to cognitive impairments in processing social cues and information. Usually, Scott McKenna went to rehab, came back, and just fight with the same people that didn't want anything to do with him in the first place. The same people that talk shit about him. The same people that call him doxer. The same people that accuse him of threatening to kill people, which he did. The same people that said he's a piece of shit and think he's the worst human being of all time. But there he was, back in the same place. His high interest in repetitive behaviors due to coming back and fighting with the same people, trying to pretend it's not him, is kind of interesting. Because it also shows that Scott McKenna can't do anything else outside of just YouTube stuff. His life revolves around drama in the first place. Anyway, let's go. I guess from cognitive impairments and shit, we can all say that based on all that, he seems to have trouble not understanding shit. Like, back to the Kevin example. Him complaining about other people having fun with his jet, and he's mad about it because there are people he doesn't like and has fun with them, and he should, ban them because they did things to him. And not understanding the fact that Ken doesn't have him around because he did things to Ken might show why he feels entitled, because he just doesn't understand that Ken doesn't want anything to do with him, or he just doesn't care and he feels entitled to that in the first place. Ken should do something regardless, because how dare they do something with him? How could you have them in your chats? Right, but that's that. Let's go. Let's talk about motor impairments. Individuals with developmental disabilities may have difficulties with fine or gross motor skills, such as coordination, balance, or muscle control. Yep.
Everybody in the club.
This sounds all about right, doesn't it?
Everybody going
Oh,
on
yes,
a date.
it does.
Make poop.
Gross
Everybody
motor
running late.
skills.
Just make poop. When you're
We're
done
gonna
to
go
talk,
into
you
the
gotta
motor
take
skills a
dump.
bit.
No matter
Or not.
how good you try,
But
you'll always
let's
hit
talk
a
about
bump.
coordination
You will
and
get
balance
home now
and muscle.
sooner or later, but cross your fingers that you
I mean,
have
if
toilet
you've seen
paper.
his punching
If you got
bag
shit
skills,
and you're
he
stuck in
certainly
traffic,
doesn't
your
have any
palms will
skill.
sweat and your ass will twitch.
He's all over the place, he's
Ain't that a
flat-footed,
bitch?
he's
If it starts to come on,
crossing his
just give your
legs
cheeks a
as
pinch.
he moves. He's moving his head stupidly.
Have you
He
ever
even
had to take
does
a
a
shit
ninja
at a
roll
zoo?
when he's trying to
Maybe
do
at
that.
school,
I'm
maybe
not
in a
sure
pool.
what
Sometimes I
effect
have
that
to take a
is
shit
supposed
in
to
a
have or what
drive-thru.
his training. His kicks are off, he doesn't know how to throw a kick, he certainly can't.
This song goes out to the
Can't fly.
truckers. Man, I
Based on
feel
all
bad
that.
for all you motherfuckers.
That is a
People who
obvious
jumping out of
representation
planes.
of his
The people who get
coordination,
stuck in the rain.
balance, or muscle.
Doesn't matter
Even
if
when
you're
he
rich or
does
poor.
reps with squatting or
Everybody
leg curl,
just need to make
his
all the
movement
girlies do it
and
like Britney
coordination is
Spears,
terrible.
pushing out a
He doesn't
nutty
go
buddy face full of
all the way
tears.
through,
Mr.
and he
T
doesn't
has problems
do
with
it
his
properly.
colon, cause every time he shits it looks like
So he
Gary
doesn't
Coleman.
exercise.
Whenever you go and take a
I'll
crap,
say that.
do you ever turn around and take a
He
look
also
back?
seems to be able to do
Do you
math
shit
because
before
he
you
sits
pee?
75
Sometimes I pee
pounds,
before I poop, and when I
apparently
poop I pee freely.
they look
If the
way
song
more.
makes you
I'm
feel
not sure
weird, make
what
poop.
the
Who
deal
cares
is.
about the other people? Just
But anyway,
make
moving
poop.
on.
Everybody
Now,
has a
onto the
button
motor
to
skills,
make poop.
they
If
are
someone
very
gets
close to
mad, tell
performers
them they make
performing various
That's it.
hygiene-related
Haven't heard
activities.
enough people out there talking
And this
about making
includes
poop,
brushing
so
teeth,
what am I gonna do?
showering, dressing. Individuals with developmental disabilities,
Make poop
such as
again.
cerebral palsy or autism, may experience challenges
The
in
people who think shitting is an
developing
art,
and
make
controlling
poop.
their
People
motor
like
skills.
riding on a bike, make
But
poop. Shitting is a part of
considering
life,
this,
just make
this
poop.
could also
When you're at a
imply
party
that
and you
Scott
see
has
somebody hot, they
autism,
walk
but
your way, but
not
your
necessarily.
stomach doesn't
We could
knock.
say
They
that,
grab your
but
hand for
I'm
you
only
to
pointing this
dance.
out.
When you get to the floor,
He
you
did
shake your
record his
hands
own
and
tooth
it
falling out, which is kind of bad hygiene. More importantly, he does eat a lot of fake meats produced in factories, which isn't good for the body at all. That's not healthy at all. That's not very good hygiene. Eating foods like that, and considering I've seen his hair before and back then, he doesn't seem to brush his hair. That's another thing. His neck hair is messy. He looks like a potato. So obviously he does not take care of himself and take care of cleaning. These unhealthy, disgusting foods, like junks, those are not good. Those are not cleanliness things. More on hygiene later, though. So, motor skills, he doesn't seem to be able to do certain things and take care of himself properly. Motor skills that help them function in daily life also suggest that he is, like, retarded. Retards can't do this. In such cases, individuals may require additional support and accommodations, which he got from his parents, to help with their hygiene, which probably did not happen because, for one, he still looked like a disgusting fool, right? And adaptive equipment and assistance with caregivers, which he didn't have, though he probably should have received it. Healthcare professionals, it is important to address these motor skill-related challenges, which I just addressed for Scott McKinnon, because he seems to have these piss-poor motor skills. Let's move on to behavior challenges. Yay! Impulsive behavior, repetitive movements, or actions. I'm not sure about self-injurious behaviors or difficulty with self-regulation, but self-regulation might be up there. But impulsive behavior, he does lie impulsively. I mean, he just says anything at this point. We've all seen it. Like, for one, he came on air. He does come on air and said he's gonna get the FBI and all these people to review the evidence marathon, and he's gonna defend himself against all these wars. He seems to think people are gonna believe him when he says it. And then again, there's another lie that he said was, Aru and Casey Raw were hitting on Gina being creepy. Turns out, from what Aru told me, what everybody else told me, that wasn't the case at all. What it turns out is Gina finds Scott creepy instead, not the other way around. So, Scott seems to say things on the whole. He'll say anything. He'll call you obsessed, this, that, and the other. He doesn't really understand words either. Like, he'll just say a word like you're projecting, using it so long. He'll say things like cognitive dissonance, but you say it wrong in the first place. So obviously, considering this, he does have impulsive behavior. He seems to say you're all done and you're gonna take your social media down, usually. Shit's coming, you're done, you're this, you're that. He seems to have this instigative, interrogative, or what do you call it? Intimidating behavior. There we go. The intimidation. He seems to try to intimidate people all the time. He tries to sound tough. He shaves scars in his head to look tough. Try to feel different. He records himself exercising. He wants to feel tough. There is impulsive behavior regarding it. Repetitive movements. I've seen few things like touching your shoulder, walking, pacing back and forth. Back and forth. Yeah, I've seen these things. We've all seen these things. There's also the fact that he makes videos on people sometimes and things before talking to them. He watches everything and accuses others of watching everything. So he seems to have repetitive movements and actions as well. Reviewing, talking shit, bashing, and accusing them of doing it. So we could also say he's self-projecting onto other people, because if he's the one doing it, he can't be the only one doing it, right? In self-injurious behavior, well, there was a time where I was told, I'm not sure what the injury was, but he did injure himself punching a bag. And what it seemed like when Danny showed me is him, punching himself. Now, does he do that regularly? I don't know, but he's seemingly done it before. Self-regulation? I mean, everything I just described was self-regulation. Not self-regulation, rather. So he seems to have this harming himself, repetitive movements, not understanding. And I think this boils down to obsession. Now, granted, I've talked about how I don't necessarily agree with obsession, but at the same time, he is an addict. Addicts are usually addicted to something, and they feel that need to constantly do it. If they can't have that, makes them go crazy. Right. So we could say the problem is self-regulation.
If you eat too much, you get very fat now. The coconut nut
Anyway,
is
moving
a
on.
big nut, but
His
this
daily
delicious nut
living skills.
is not a nut.
Oh boy,
It's
he's
the
gonna hate me
cocoa
for going over this.
fruit
Let's
of
talk
the
about
cocoa tree.
his difficulty skills such as personal hygiene, dressing, eating, managing money,
There are so
may
many
also be
uses of the
indicative of certain
coconut
developmental
tree. You
disabilities.
can build a bigger house for the family. All you need
Like I
is
said
a
before, hygiene
pound of
refers to the practice of
coconut
habits that
if he
help to maintain
constantly
cleanliness and health.
He gets the fruits
That includes tasks like bathing, brushing teeth, washing hands, and grooming,
of the
eating
cocoa
healthy, drinking water, all that stuff, maintaining healthy, organic, meals. He seems to enjoy the fake impossible meats. We've seen that food eating. He seems to enjoy more of the processed food.
If you save some of it, you can build
Right.
a door now. The
Moving on.
coconut trunk
This is-
do not
it
throw
can
this
be
junk. If you save
Be
some
indicative
of
of
it,
certain
you'll have a
developmental
second
disorders
home.
because these
The
tasks
coconut
require a
wood
level of
is
cognitive and motor
very
skills.
good.
Like
It
I've
can
talked
stand
about
20
previously.
years if you pray
It requires some
would.
motor
Now,
skills
the
and
coconut
consistency
root
of doing
don't
these
tell
things.
you the
Right,
truth.
right.
You can throw
So
it
his
or
problem
use
of
it
doing
as
these
fire.
things, and like I said before, he seems to
Coconut
report his tooth
leaves
falling
good
out.
shade
He
it
doesn't
gives
seem to brush
for
his
the
teeth
roof,
every day.
for the walls
You can
up
already
against
have
the
his cat.
eaves now.
Look at
The
his face
coconut
and
fruit
shit,
say
look at
my
his face.
relatives
That's
make
how vegans
good
do.
cannonballs up against
not a
the
good thing,
tree. It's
really.
the cocoa fruit
It really isn't. He doesn't seem to take care of
of
himself
the
at all.
cocoa tree.
I mean, you could say he goes to the
From
gym,
cocoa
but
palm
he looks like a potato.
The
He's
coconut
doesn't
nut
seem
is
to
a
have a
giant
good
nut.
body.
If you
In
eat
fact,
too
his
much,
hands look
you
even
get very
just as bad. They're squiddy.
It's a big nut, but it's delicious.
For individuals, you could probably link autism, Down syndrome, or intellectual disabilities. Difficulties with hygiene may be related to challenges with motor conditions, sensory processing, or understanding social norms around cleanliness. You could probably say Scott McKinnon either has autism or Down syndrome,
Of the cocoa tree.
but I think it's just brain injury he
From
gets
the
because
cocoa
being
palm
punched in the face all the time as a
family.
child. He probably did it to himself, and now he has neurological disorders.
Of
But then
the
again,
cocoa tree.
autism is developed over
From
the
the cocoa
time of your environment, genetics, and basically socioeconomics. Basically, the whole environment that affects your personality and the people you grow up around with.
From the
Autism, I guess you could lump that with there. The problem with communication skills. But I don't think my problem with communication is that, even though I have good communications for what it's worth, I would say, and I'm pretty much getting points across in the first place, so communication isn't really my problem. But for Scott McKinnon, it is a problem. So basically, he's more of an autist than I am, just not diagnosed with it. Anyway, moving on. My point being, Scott McKinnon, Scunty McDirtface, doesn't seem to understand the importance of cleanliness, personal hygiene. Doesn't seem to understand that. Doesn't seem to understand how to maintain that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying eating junk food is bad, but if that's all you eat, and if you eat fake impossible meats, and you don't drink water, you just drink beer all day, now who knows? But thing is, Scott does not seem to maintain his own health. That's the importance of hygiene. But this all boils down to Scott McKinnon having developmental disorder. He also struggles with self-care and personal hygiene due to a lack of understanding of the importance of cleanliness, or difficulty with executive functioning skills, such as planning and organizing daily tasks. Like I said before, he seems not to be able to punch a bag properly or kick. He doesn't train properly. He records them. There's more effort in recording than there is actual exercise, right? So I think we can make the presumption that, yeah, he does definitely have these. Also, to note, he also seems having trouble understanding how to make a coherent sentence and a coherent argument. Sometimes, you might be right on some things, but sometimes in my life, video, I had to like extrapolate what he probably means by what he says. And that's probably why a lot of people say he's lying, because he bullshits a lot, and he communicates in a way that people don't understand. And he goes, "Why aren't you comprehending?" Because he's an incomprehensible person, you know? So, moving on. Yes, this is a neurological disorder. It can be associated with neurology, as they often involve impairment of the nervous system, especially the brain. Many developmental disabilities are caused by neurological conditions or abnormalities in brain development. Neurologists often play a role in diagnosing and treating individuals with developmental disabilities. Additionally, some developmental disabilities may require neurological interventions or treatments, right? Now, whatever that treatment is, we don't know, Scott. I mean, autism, maybe. I mean, brain injury. I think the good one would be brain injuries. He drank so much alcohol it damaged it. He probably was punched so many times to a point where his brain now functions differently, right? I mean, at the time, he was dressing like a woman thinking he was trans, right? So, you can already conclude that Scott's not right in the head. And I think it's just based on him being punched in the face so many times. His face losing so many fights. That's why his eyes are like that. But going on, neurology is a branch of medicine too, concerned with the study of treatment of disorders or of the nervous system, which I don't think you could treat Scott because he is a basket place of problems of more problems. He has multiple personality disorder, and those set of personalities have their own set of disorders. He's a clear-cut basket case. The nervous system is complex though. Sophisticated system that regulates the coordination body activities. It has two major divisions: central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord. Can't pronounce this. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Peripheral nervous system. All other neutral elements such as eyes, ears, skin, other sensory receptors. Yeah, if you look at this face, you can probably make that presumption that he has neurological disorder. I think he certainly also has developmental delays. And usually examples include ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, and other learning disabilities. Though when I read this off the article, it implies that autism and ADHD is a learning disability, but they don't elaborate what the learning disability really is. But I guess it's just having a learning disability, which Scott has trouble learning. If not, he can't learn at all. So I guess he's just I can't learn disorder or something. Anyway, moving on. I'm gonna list these motor skills and delays and shit. Let's go. Delayed milestones in motor skills, language or social development, difficulty with attention, focus, or hyperactivity, difficulty with social interaction or communication, repetitive behaviors or restricted interests, impulsivity or difficulty with self-regulation, learning difficulties and challenges with academic performance, sensory sensitivities or unusual reactions to sensory input, difficulty with organization or executive function. Now, I covered most of these, basically, right? But let's talk about the fact that he can't seem to write a sentence. So obviously he has terrible academic skills, right? Right. He also seems to can't do math based on his pay stub that he posted. His whole logic is he's made 4,000 in gross in a month, in a week, and he's made 97,000 in 7 months. That's like terrible math. And if you count weeks are in 7 months, there's 30. He's not going to get 97,000. So we can already establish that he's terrible at math. Also, there's many more things wrong with it, but we'll just say that they should be listed on the rates, which rates are in their entirely different column. So we can already guess that he is terrible at math and he doesn't do intellectual work at all. Not that he's capable of it in the first place. like I said, he can't write sentences. He doesn't know how to punctuate. He doesn't know how to separate. He just writes a wrong paragraph. So basically, yeah. His difficulty with social interaction. When I ask, "Oh, why are you flat-footed?" He seems to get mad and call me autism. He doesn't like confrontation. He doesn't seem to understand criticism. He doesn't really understand how to have a conversation. His idea of conversation is agree with everything I say, or you're a bad person. Right? Right. I've also talked about repetitive behaviors. Also talked about impulsivity or difficulty with self-regulation, learning difficulties or challenges. All these things just comes down to, he is developmental disorder. Basically, I just diagnosed him with that. And basically,